Hello, I'm Kirsty Young, and this is a podcast from the Desert Island Discs archive. For rights reasons, we've had to shorten the music. The programme was originally broadcast in 2004, and the presenter was Sue Lawley.
My castaway this week is a footballer. His whole life has been devoted to the game, from his childhood in County Durham to his playing days for England, followed by his long career as manager of some half a dozen clubs at home and abroad, and of our national squad. As a kid, he'd kick anything around, including a lump of coal, and used to make a 34-mile round trip to watch his home side play. He played for Fulham and West Bromwich Albion and was in the World Cup squads of 58 and 62. As a manager, he took Ipswich to victory in the FA and the UEFA Cups, and throughout the 80s was the man with the second most difficult job in British public life, manager of England. A successful international career followed, and then, aged 66, instead of retiring, he returned to manage the side he'd loved since he first watched them play 60 years previously, Newcastle United. Energetic and passionate players have often said they'd go through a brick wall for him. He says, "It's a tough world, and you don't get to the top without it being rough sometimes." He is, of course, Sir Bobby Robson. And it's been rough to the end, if the end it is, Sir Bobby, because you were rather unceremoniously sacked a few months ago. Was that in many ways the unkindest cut of all, to end in that kind of way?
Well, yes, just about. I was very disappointed, and actually I was stunned, shocked, bewildered. I didn't expect it, but it is a tough life. You have to win football matches. I was dismissed in August, so we hadn't played too many. 5 years I'd been at the club. I loved every minute of it. My father took me there as a boy. He bled black and white, so did I, and I loved the job. And we'd made great progress.
So it's still hurting,
obviously. Well, it'll always hurt, because it was my club, and I loved it very much. But these things happen sometimes in football. They are unexplainable, I guess, sometimes. I'm getting over it now. My head's much better. You have to look forward, not look back, and I'm doing that.
I wonder if it reminded you of the first time you were sacked, because that was many years ago, I think, when you were managing Fulham, wasn't it? That was your first experience of being sacked. But you were pretty devastated on that occasion.
Yes, I was. Twice in my life. I mean, I started my professional managerial career with Fulham. So I guess you could say I started my managerial career with being dismissed, and I finished my managerial career with being dismissed.
And when you were sacked that first time, you've confessed that you wept.
I did. I was a young boy.
Cottage, yeah.
I was a young man, I should say, not a boy. I was a young man, and couldn't believe what had happened to me. I was so distraught. I actually went onto the middle of the pitch, stood in the centre circle, alone, nobody there. Few seagulls flying around off the River Thames, as you know. And I actually cried. I shed tears that this had happened to me.
But it was more than just sadness at being sacked, wasn't it, or feeling that you'd been wronged? It seems to me, being the kind of guy you are, you just felt there was a sense of shame about it.
Well, you feel as though you failed, don't you? And that's very hurtful.
You're going to end up on the dole, which is not something that people from your family did or do, is it?
No, that's right. And married with 3 young boys. We were trying to educate the boys properly, so they were at public schools with due respect. And of course, when I lost my job, I didn't have any money. So I had to actually sign on the dole, and I queued up with all sorts of people. And yes, I was embarrassed.
But you're not going to end up on the dole this time, I'm sure. Did you weep this time?
No, not quite. I was very hurt, but I was strong enough to get over it and didn't argue, accepted what happened to me, and kept my reputation, my credibility, and my dignity, and left the club under those circumstances.
Tell me about your first record.
Well, it's a song called "It's a Very Good Year," and and as it happens, it hasn't been a very good year, but it's a beautiful song. I like Robbie Williams, and He made an album not too long ago, Robbie Williams, and he introduced Sinatra into this particular song. So you've got the young voice of Robbie Williams and the mature voice of Sinatra.
When I was 21, it was a very good year. We'd ride in limousines, their chauffeurs would drive. When I was 35.
Robbie Williams and Frank Sinatra, and it was a very good year. So tell me about that childhood in the mining village of Sacriston, wasn't it? Your dad was a miner.
Yes. My father was a miner, worked 51 years down the mine. The last 42 years of his working life, he worked without losing a shift. He went out of the house white, came home black, like a chimney sweep.
Was the tin bath in front of the fire?
And the tin bath was in front of the fire. And as kids, we were bathed, I think, twice a week in front of the fire. My father had 5 sons, 5 boys, so I had 4 brothers.
And your mum didn't work?
No, they never did in those days. There was no work for them. Mum was a housewife, and that was her life. She just looked after her boys.
And were there any...
And she was always home, so whenever you went and came back, Mum was always home.
And what do you feel that did for you then?
Well, family is the most important thing in your life. It's more important than work, I guess. You know, Mum was reliable and constant, and my father was a terrific father. We didn't have much money. We had handed-down clothes, obviously, with 5 sons. I suppose that was an advantage in our house. I grew up feeling very well taken care of and very much loved.
And you were taken to the football. It was your dad who took you on this 34-mile round trip, was it?
Yes,
How did he do that, and how did you afford that? I suppose it was a lot cheaper than
Well,
it
I wouldn't know. All I know is that Dad, every home match at Newcastle, Dad managed to take one of my brothers, Ron, and I, to go to Newcastle on the bus. We would go into a shop called Phoenix, where they had a bit of a restaurant. He would somehow buy tea for 3 of us and 2 ham buns each. Can you believe that? That was a real treat. And we'd get to St. James's Park and we'd be first at the stadium. You know, seriously, really, my father and my brother Ron and myself were the first in the queue at St. James's Park before the gates opened.
Amazing.
50 years later, I was manager of the club. I mean, my father would have loved it. He didn't see that, unfortunately.
But he must have been one of the first to spot your talent for the game.
Oh, yeah, because he used to come and watch me play schoolboy football. I played for the local village team, Langley Park Juniors. He never missed a match. He travelled away to all the away games.
But the idea that you would become a professional footballer must have been anathema to him. I mean, he wouldn't approve of that, would he?
No, I wouldn't say that. But when I left school at 50 and a half, I went to work down the pit. I went down the shaft every day of my life for a year and a half, from 50 and a half to 17 years of age. I had to make sure that the coal cutters and all the electrical equipment and all the lighting was working. So I was an electrical engineer, and he insisted that when I went to Fulham in London, I carried on with my apprenticeship.
He wanted you to keep your trade.
He was worried that I wouldn't make the grade.
Sure.
He worried that I would break my leg. He worried in that sense, and he just wanted me to have a second bow to my life and that I had security.
Record number 2. Tell me about that.
It's a tune. It's a song that I've known for a long, long time. It's a stirring song. It's an emotional song. It makes the hairs on my neck prick up. It reminds me of war and sadness, and I can listen to it every day. And it's a beautiful song, and it's by Elgar.
part of Nimrod from Elgar's Enigma Variations, played by the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Sir Simon Rattle. You've taken various of your footballing squads and boards down the pit on occasions, haven't you, Bobby? What's been the point of that?
Yes, I once took the whole Ipswich Town Football Club board of directors down a mine, put knee pads on them, put a great big alkaline battery on their back, put a tin helmet on them, and put the lamp in the tin helmet. And I took them down the mine.
But why did you want to do it? What did you think it would show them or teach them?
Well, like I'm saying, the other side of life, the unpleasant side of life, the tough side of life.
Sure.
And I think people who play in football love their life and love their jobs, and they get up every day and they enjoy going there. I did. But not many people in this world get up every day and want to go to work and go to a job which is going to give them a great deal of contentment and happiness and safety.
But it's more than that, isn't it? Because footballers these days, live in mansions and have flash cars and diamond studs in their ears. Is there part of you that kind of thinks that's, well, slightly disapproves of that then?
Well, I never had it. I'm not jealous of that, by the way. But I sometimes think the present-day footballer just doesn't appreciate the life football gives them. They do earn a lot of money. They earn maybe in some cases too much, and they get it too early, and they don't know what to do with it. They've never had a wage packet of £7 a week. I went into football on £7 a week. £2.50 I spent on my digs, so I had no money. But as you know, nowadays, we have 19-year-olds who drive in BMWs. That's the norm, by the way.
But do you think that's bad for them?
I do, yes. I just wish they would appreciate it. I don't think they do. I think some do. You can't tar them all with the same brush. But many don't appreciate it.
There's a story, isn't there, that sums it up about you being asked to turn back the team bus because one of your players left his diamond ear-stud in the dressing room.
Yeah, perfectly true. Halfway home and, boss! And I turn around and a certain player saying, please turn the bus around. I've left my diamond earring in the dressing room. I said, tough.
Record number 3.
I've always liked Peggy Lee. There was once a disc jockey called Ray Moore who I used to enjoy very much. And this was Ray Moore's favourite song. It's a funny little song. In fact, she talks in the song about going to the circus. So she is all excited about going to the circus. And she sees the elephants and the bears and whatever she sees. And then she thinks, oh, well, it's all over now. It's like, so is that all there is to this?
Is that all there is to the circus? Is that all there is? Is that all there is? If that's all there is, my friends, then let's keep dancing. Let's break out the booze and have a ball.
Peggy Lee, and Is That All There Is? So more than half a century ago it was that you first came down to London, wasn't it? 1950. It must have been a brave decision, and you must have been a pretty lonely 17-year-old to find yourself down in Fulham, as we say, having to work all day because your father wanted you to maintain your proper job and train all evening. It must have been tough.
Yeah, it was tough, and I was lonely, and I was homesick. I have to tell you that, and I had to get over it. Fortunately, I shared a small room with a great friend of mine, great footballing friend, Tom Wilson. We used to go up to the Piccadilly, and walk around, see the lights, buy a coffee. That's all we could afford. But occasionally we would go to the Palladium, we would see the stars. I mean, I saw Sinatra and I saw Nat King Cole. I mean, I missed my parents, I missed my brothers, I missed my friends. And life was tough because I had 2 jobs. I was getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, starting work at 7 at an electrical engineering company in Victoria. I worked on the Festival of Great Britain site.
What, you wired it?
I wired it. I helped to wire it.
Did you?
And finally, I did give up my job because I knew to do 2 jobs, I was risking both. I wanted to be a good footballer. That was really my ambition. So I persuaded my father to come down to London, and he allowed me to actually pack in my apprenticeship as an electrical engineer when I was about 18 and a half.
This was a great breakthrough.
Yeah, well, that meant I could spend more time at the game. I could train every day with the rest of the players. I could work with the players. I could develop my technique. And I made it. Not saying I hit the jackpot, but I became a very good footballer.
But it's been a pretty single-minded business, is my point, isn't it? You and football.
Yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely. It's been a straight line. It's been one line.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I had no distractions.
Except you got married, of course.
Well, I got married, yes. I went home in my first year at Fulham and met Elsie at a little dance hop which we had in the villages in those days, and spent 5 years in a courtship, mainly through the telephone and writing letters. But I used to keep my little sixpences, you know. In those days you had little sixpences. And I would say, I've put 5 in, I can't afford any more, so I'll have to say bye-bye, good night, see you again. Put the phone down.
Record number 4.
Record number 4 is Chris de Burgh singing The Lady in Red. I'm a bit of a romantic, I guess. I mean, I love songs, and it's me, and it is, I have to say, one of my favourite songs.
It's where I want to be, but I hardly know this beauty by my side. I'll never forget the way you look tonight.
Chris de Burgh and The Lady in Red. So, Bobby Robson, you started to play for England.
Yes, I did.
You played in the 58 World Cup, and then you were in the squad for 62, but
Yes.
you cracked your ankle bone, didn't
I
you,
did.
and couldn't play.
Yes, I did.
And that seemed to be the end of that. You never did get to the 66, which, as we know, was the great moment when we won. We won the one and only time.
I was still playing football then, though, of course.
Yeah, but how sad were you not to be in that squad?
Particularly when I thought I was good enough to be picked as well. But there you were. You don't know everything in life, and the manager is the one who picks and he decides. But I was still playing for Fulham in 66. I was in the first team. I was playing very well. I was one of the strong players in the team, I guess, one of the strong nucleuses of the team. But
So you was robbed, really?
Well, no, I think so. I've chose the right squad. He won it, so I mean, you can't say he was wrong. And
But-
it was wonderful to win it in 1966.
Amazing. But all of the time, during this time, you're obviously your father's son, you'd been doing a coaching course, hadn't you, in various forms?
Mainly through Walter Winterbottom, because I remember Walter coming to us in 61 and saying to Don Howe and I, what are you two going to do when you finish football? And we looked at each other, we said, well, we didn't know, we hadn't thought that far. And he said, well, it's about time you did. So Don Howe and I, while we're still playing, became qualified as Football Association staff coaches. So when I was finished, I had qualifications, you know. And maybe the modern footballer now doesn't have to do that, because the time he finishes at 35, he's a multi-millionaire. He probably have 10 million, 15 million, 20 million pound in the bank. So they don't worry about that anymore. And that worries me, because I'm just worrying who's going to take the game on. Where are our next coaches and where our next manager is going to come from?
Next piece of music.
Some years ago, UEFA, which is the Union of European Football Clubs, made a compilation of several clubs which had been successful to show on their coaching courses. And in 1996-97, as coach of Barcelona, I won the European Cup Winners' Cup. And thankfully, they chose myself in that particular year as one of their examples, and they put this on tape. And when they showed me this tape, I couldn't believe how stupid I looked, because there I was on the touchline. I was jumping up and down. And I remember it very distinctly, actually. We're winning 1-0 in the final of this European Cup Winners' Cup. And we're on a slender lead, and the minutes were dragging. And my team looked as though we were torn a little bit, looking a little bit tired. We only had a 1-0 cushion. And I'm this stupid football idiotic manager jumping up and down, trying to get a bit of extra from the players. And then they put this lovely song. And it's a song I've always liked, but because I'm on this compilation, I had to choose it.
Seeing me so tense, no self-confidence, but you see, the winner takes it all. The winner takes it all.
ABBA and The Winner Takes It All. Do you have to learn the languages then of all these European clubs you've run? Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch?
Well, I had to try to speak Portuguese and Spanish, and I did. I mean, I got by every day with the players on the pitch, The Dutch was very difficult. And everybody in Holland speaks English anyway, so I didn't waste my time on that. You know, some words are very similar, like, you know, we say very difficult, don't they? But in Spanish, that is muy difícil. So it's a little similar, isn't it? And in Porto was muito difícil. So, but very difficult in Dutch was heel moeilijk. Now, that's got no bearing on very difficult, has it? So it was a nightmare. I enjoyed the football, I didn't like the language.
Let's talk about when you were England manager from 82 to 90. Now, if ever you needed the skin of a rhinoceros, this was the time, wasn't it? You became public property. You were blamed for everything. I mean, are you still going to tell me it was the best job in the world?
It was the most important job in England, and it's the most prestigious job. I did like it. I loved it at the end. It was difficult for the first 2 years, getting to know the players and to get to know the job, because it's quite different to managing a football club where you're at it, working with players day in and day out every day.
Well, you don't necessarily have that spotlight. That's the point, isn't it? I mean, you are constantly, you take a tremendous amount of stick, don't you, in that?
Yeah.
And I mean,
absolutely,
you know, like Sven-Goran Eriksson, your personal life was trawled through, wasn't it?
You know, you can't sneeze, you can't cough really unless somebody sees it and writes about it.
So is it worth it?
It is if you win football matches, and basically I did, and Sven has. I mean, Sven hasn't lost too many games, basically.
Well, indeed. But in the meantime, of course, while you were still there, you had the hand of God to cope with as well. I mean, you can't bargain for that, can you?
Well, yes, 2 World Cups. In '86 we went to Mexico, and we did very well. The team, it was a good team. We got to the last 8. We played the favourites in Argentina. We were robbed. We were actually cheated by the hand of God. I said it was the hand of a rascal. He was the most fabulous player you'd ever seen in your life. He scored a wonderful goal in that particular match against us, but he also cheated us with the hand of God as he compiled it by punching the ball in the back of the net, and it cost us dearly.
Still feel bitter about it?
Oh, I do, yeah, because we just felt if we could get rid of Argentina in this particular match, we'd eventually would have to meet Germany, I guess, in the final. But who knows, you know, if that had happened. But it was not to be. So we got to the last 8. We came home with, you know, heads held high, to be honest.
But of course, 4 years later, you did meet West Germany, and there was that penalty shootout that had us all hiding behind the sofas here at home. Anyway, what's it like for the manager in that moment? I mean, what can you do? The feeling of impotence.
We had, by this time, developed a very good team, probably better than the 1986 team. We knew it might come to penalties. We practiced it. I was very confident about the players we had on the pitch. Lineker, Beardsley, David Platt, Pearce, Chris Waddle were the first 5. Pearce, in actual fact, was probably the best penalty kicker we had in the squad, and we placed him at number 4. So when it got to 3-3, with Stuart Pearce to take the 4th penalty kick, I was supremely confident. Good character, tough lad, kept his nerve, didn't think he could miss. But unfortunately he did. He hit a bit of a straight shot. The keeper went one way and saved it with his legs. That's how unlucky we were. And the ball went over the bar. So we were now, after Germany taking their 4th penalty, we were now 4-3 down, with Chrissy Waddle to take the last penalty kick. And Chrissy Waddle was a very confident player. I mean, he could take penalties in training with his eyes closed and still score. And again, I thought Chrissy would score and he would keep us in the game. But on the night, you know, things get to you, I guess. And he just seemed to run to the ball, did Chris Waddle. He just seemed to lift his head a little bit as he struck the ball, and it went over the bar. And so we were out. And we were a fine team. If we'd won, we'd meet again, funny enough, Argentina in the World Cup. And we had a score to settle with them. So there wasn't any doubt in my mind that had we beaten West Germany on that particular day, we would have won the World Cup for the second time. I was very disappointed. I was sad. I could have cried myself, but I knew I couldn't. Went in the dressing room after the match. I mean, the 2 boys, Waddle and Pearce, were inconsolable.
Sure.
The country has to know that. Head down, crying, tearful. Couldn't look at me, you know. And all I could do was just put my hand on their backs, on their shoulders, and just say, "Forget about it. You've done your best. That's all you can do. There's no harm done."
Next record.
Well, Nessun Dorma means none shall sleep. And that was me in the World Cup, I tell you, in 1990, because for about 5 weeks I didn't sleep. It was the theme song of the World Cup. The World Cup in 1990 will live with me forever. That penalty situation that I've been talking to you about, I recall that virtually every day of my life. I think about that situation where England could have got to the final of the World Cup. I was in charge, and we just didn't quite get there. I'll never forget it. So the song was the theme song from the World Cup, and it will always remind me of one of the greatest and most successful years of my professional life.
Nessun Dorma from Puccini's Turandot, performed by the three tenors, José Carreras, Placido Domingo and Luciano Pavarotti, with the Orchestra del Maggio Musicale Fiorente and the Orchestra del Teatro dell'Opera di Roma, conducted by Zubin Mehta. It was during your European career, Sir Bobby Robson, that you discovered you had a very unusual form of cancer. What was it and how did you discover it?
I came home one summer when I was working in Portugal to my wife, who said, I've arranged for you to see the doctor about your sinuses. I said, what sinuses? She said, well, your sinuses. You know how you always have a bit of trouble in the winter with your sinuses. I said, I haven't got time, Elsie. I've just come home for the summer. To cut a long story short, I went to please her, to the doctors. He said, I have to refer you to an ear, nose and throat specialist. I came home to my wife, I said, there you are now. I've now got to go to an ear, nose and throat specialist. I haven't got time to go to the ear, nose and throat specialist, Elsie. I went to please her. He then said, you might need a little operation, we'll clear your sinuses out. I went home to Elsie. I said, Elsie, I've now got to go to hospital to have an operation. I haven't got time to go to hospital, Elsie. And the surgeon said that he'd taken a bit of muck out of my nose and he'd put it under biopsy, but it looked okay, and he'd let me know in 3 weeks' time. And he rang me the next morning and said, I know where you live, stay there, and I want to talk to you. I said, oh, fine. Came to my house, sat me down. He just said, I've got some very grave news for you. You have a malignant melanoma in your nose, inside your head. I said, you mean a tumour? Do you mean a tumour? He said, yes, that's what you've got, and it's malignant. You're very unlucky. It's a 2% cancer, but you have it. He said, I've got the consultant surgeon coming today to see you. You need an operation yesterday. I couldn't believe him. I said, are you sure? I mean, look at me. I said, look at me. What are you talking to me about? But I had to take note of what he said.
It's amazing that Elsie obviously had a sixth sense about it, didn't she?
Absolutely. Without my wife, I wouldn't be here. She saved my life. She made me go. And without that visit to those three people, the doctor, the surgeon, and then the consultant surgeon, and I had an operation within 24 hours.
Major stuff, wasn't it? Because they had to take away the whole of the roof of your mouth.
Well, they had to go through the roof of my mouth. Yeah. So they cut me from my eye right round my nose, through my lip, took my teeth out, went through my head and went into the back of my head. This cancer was just under my eye, but inside my head. And they said, and what we suggest you do is you retire. People with this don't go back to work.
How long ago was this?
It was in 1995. Yeah. I went back with my face still semi-swollen.
And could you speak?
By this time, because I have this obturator in my mouth. It's like a palate which keeps my face in position.
But you have to put that in and out.
Oh, yes, I have to take it out like people have with false teeth. But it's more than just a palate.
So it goes up behind your nose?
It's a bung, yes. It fits into my face. And I have to clean it out. Every time I eat, I clean it out 3 times a day. I get on with my life, Sue. I can talk, I can drink, and I can live a life.
You just don't like being defeated.
No. And I went back to work in October, and here I am, still looking for a job. What, 7, 8, no, more than that.
So you are still looking for a job?
Later. Well, see what happens.
Oh, well, there's obviously something going on. I can see there's a twinkle in your eye.
Yeah, well, there always is with football. And I just feel I've got another job somewhere, another 2 years. I'd like that, but I'm not going to take the wrong job. I'll just wait for the right job.
OK. Record number 7.
Barry White, whose voice I love, Just the Way You Are, which is a lovely song, a lovely melody, lovely words, and it reminds you, doesn't it, of your loved ones.
Although I might not seem to care, I don't want clever conversation. Don't want to work that hard, no love. I just want someone to talk to. I want you just the way you are.
Barry White and Just the Way You Are. I'm not sure I can visualise you alone on a desert island, sort of kicking half a coconut around or something. What are you going to do with yourself there, Bobby?
Well, I'll have to keep myself occupied, so I need a big, thick book. Do you want me to tell you what the book is?
Yeah, why not?
Well, I'd like a book of the wars of the 20th century. I haven't got the book, so one I should buy. It's John Keegan's History of the First and Second World Wars. I don't know much about those wars. I wasn't alive for the 1418, but it must have been traumatic. It must have been just dreadful. I mean, how soldiers and men and young boys lived through those days, I will never know.
And what would be your reflections on, well, I suppose on the world of football as you sit on your desert island, you know, and the way in which it's changed, as we've been saying throughout this programme?
Well, I know about that. I mean, I've lived that life. So
Yes.
every day I know how the game has changed, how it's changed financially, how it's changed technically. I mean, a good game today, a brilliant game today, Arsenal versus Manchester United, or Charlton Athletic playing Leicester, is a better game today than it was 30 years ago. But in many, many ways, I feel I've seen the best of it where it was a sport. And people understand about losing, because the game is about winning and losing it. Now, unfortunately, nobody now, at the moment, understands about losing. They can't take it.
Last record.
Well, I went to America a few years ago, and I took my wife, and I went to New Orleans. I'd never been to New Orleans. And I went to a little place, I'd read about it, a place where Louis Armstrong had started. It was a small little theatre, if you could call it that, called Preservation Hall. And Louis Armstrong, I mean, what an artist, what a voice. And this song, We Have All the Time in the World, just makes me relax. It makes me sit down and just contemplate life. And I look back over my life. Unfortunately, I haven't got all the time in the world. It's kind of diminishing, but I do love the song.
We have all the time in the world, just for love, nothing more, nothing less, only love.
Louis Armstrong and We Have All the Time in the World. Well, if you could only take one of those 8 records to your desert island, Bobby, which one would you take?
I would take Sinatra's and Robbie Williams.
Yeah, double the value there.
Double the value.
Yeah, it was a very good year you're taking. And what about your luxury?
Well, if I'm going to sit on a desert island and read a thick book, I would need something very comfortable, I think, to lie on. So I'd take the biggest, most comfortable, softest sunbed that money can buy, with a sun hood, obviously, to protect the sunshine on my head all day. So I want to be nice and comfortable, and I would happily see out the rest of my life reading John Keegan's History of the First and Second World Wars in a comfortable position.
Sir Bobby Robson, thank you very much indeed for letting us hear your Desert Island Discs.
You've been listening to a podcast from the Desert Island Discs archive. For more podcasts, please visit bbc.co.uk/Radio4.